Get your greasy hands off. Laughter echoed in the opulent hall as Tasha, a black teen in thrift store clothes, faced cruel mockery for daring to touch a rich girl's gleaming Steinway. Humiliated before the elite Crestwood Academy students, anger surged within her. But instead of retreating, she sat down. Seconds later, a thunderous storm of Chopin erupted, silencing the sneers and leaving everyone, including the smug bully, utterly shocked. How did this girl from South LA unleash such jaw-dropping power? Witness her fight against prejudice and the stunning performance that changed everything. The air inside Crestwood Academy's music hall smelled different. Not bad, just sterile. Like money scrubbed clean of any inconvenient history, polished surfaces reflecting a light that seemed filtered, somehow less generous than the raw California sun Tasha Williams had left behind on the bus ride up from South Los Angeles. Beverly Hills felt like another planet, and Crestwood Academy, nestled within its manicured heart, was its gleaming, intimidating capital. 14-year-old Tasha tugged at the sleeves of her blazer. It was a good blazer, deep navy wool, found after meticulous searching through racks at the Goodwill near her foster home. It fit well enough, but under the recessed lighting of the hall, against the backdrop of hushed tones and fabrics that whispered expense, it felt like a costume. A borrowed skin that didn't quite belong. Her eyes, wide and absorbing everything, landed on the piano. It wasn't just a piano, it was the piano. A Steinway concert grand, its ebony finish so deep it seemed to drink the light, reflecting the vaulted ceiling like a still, black lake. A small, tasteful brass plaque near the keyboard read, "Generously donated by the Kensington family." Tasha's fingers, long and slender, twitched. An involuntary yearning, familiar and insistent, pulled her forward. Music was her anchor, the language she spoke most fluently, and this instrument, this was the voice she'd only dreamed of commanding. She'd played on battered uprights in community centers, keyboards with sticky keys in school music rooms, even imagined phantom scales on bus seats. But a Steinway, this was sacred ground. She took a tentative step closer, drawn by an invisible current. The polished would seem to hum with latent power. She could almost feel the weighted perfection of the keys beneath her fingertips, the resonant thunder waiting to be unleashed. Her hand lifted, hovering just inches above the immaculate ivory and ebony. "Careful there." The voice sliced through the reverent silence Tasha had felt. It was languid, coated in a casual disdain that felt practiced. Tasha turned. Victoria Kensington stood a few feet away, flanked by two other girls whose expressions mirrored hers, a blend of boredom and amusement. Victoria, 15, blonde hair catching the artificial light like spun gold, tilted her head, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. "That's a real instrument. You know?" Victoria continued, her voice carrying easily in the acoustically perfect room. "Not like those toy things you probably bang on down. Wherever it is you come from." One of her friends stifled a giggle. Tasha felt a hot flush creep up her neck. She knew the implication, the casual dismissal wrapped in silk-smooth words. "You don't belong here. This isn't for you." Her hand remained suspended, caught between desire and the sudden, sharp awareness of being watched, judged. She should pull back. Say nothing. Find her assigned seat and wait her turn. But the insult, coupled with the magnetic pull of the piano, held her frozen. It was the toy thing's comment that stung, erasing years of dedication, hours spent coaxing music from worn-out instruments, the memory of Doc's calloused fingers guiding hers. Victoria's smirk widened. She took a step closer, her gaze flicking dismissively over Tasha's blazer, lingering for a fraction of a second on her dark skin. "Seriously?" she snapped, her voice losing its lazy drawl and gaining a sharper edge. "Get your greasy hands off it. Daddy wouldn't want it smudged." Greasy hands. The words hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. A ripple of quiet chuckles spread through the small cluster of students waiting for the scholarship auditions. No one intervened. No one met Tasha's eyes. They were witnesses, complicit in their silence. Something inside Tasha fractured. The heat in her neck surged, flooding her face, tightening her chest. It was the familiar burn of injustice, the wearying weight of assumptions worn like a shroud. For a moment, the opulent hall seemed to shrink, the air growing thick and suffocating. She could feel Doc's voice in her ear, a low rumble from memory. "Don't let M quench your fire, kid. Let the music talk. Let it roar." She inhaled sharply, the breath shuddering in her lungs. Then, with a deliberation that surprised even herself, she didn't retreat. She moved forward. Her thrift store blazer rustled as she slid onto the polished leather of the piano bench. Felt cool and firm beneath her. The Steinway seemed to exhale, waiting. Ignoring the collective gasp, the sudden stillness that fell over the room, Tasha placed her hands, not greasy, just hands that knew work and worry and the rough comfort of old piano keys, onto the pristine surface of the Steinway. They felt perfect. Weighted, responsive, alive. She closed her eyes for a fleeting second, shutting out Victoria's stunned face, the curious stares, the imposing grandeur of the hall. She brought up the image of Doc's smile, the sound of jazz drifting from the community center's open door, the fierce love of Ms. Lopez, her foster mother. She gathered the anger, the humiliation, the years of silent striving, and channeled it into her fingertips. Then she played. It wasn't a polite, tentative opening. It was an explosion. The opening chords of Chopin's Etude Op. 10, number 12, the revolutionary Etude, ripped through the hall with astonishing force. The sound was immense, far bigger than Tasha's slight frame suggested. It was a torrent of notes, a cascade of fury and passion, each arpeggio executed with blistering precision, each crashing chord resonating with defiance. The music filled every corner of the room, bouncing off the polished wood and vaulted ceilings, swallowing the preceding silence whole. It wasn't just technically proficient, it was raw, visceral, bleeding emotion. It spoke of struggle, of anger, of a spirit refusing to be silenced. It was the sound of a locked door being kicked open. Silence fell again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the silence of dismissal. It was the silence of shock. Utter, unadulterated shock. Victoria Kensington stood frozen, her mouth slightly agape, the smirk wiped clean from her face. Her friends stared, wide-eyed. The other students seemed collectively breathless. Near the front, Mr. Chun, the music teacher, a man known for his unflappable demeanor and meticulous note-taking, slowly lowered the clipboard he'd been holding. It slipped from his grasp and clattered onto the polished floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the wake of the musical tempest. He didn't stoop to pick it up. His eyes were fixed on Tasha, his expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning wonder. Tasha held the final, resonant chord, letting it hang in the air until it slowly faded into the stunned quiet. Her chest heaved. Her fingers tingled. The anger was still there, but it had been transmuted into something powerful, something undeniable. She hadn't just played the piano. She had answered. South Los Angeles Community Center 3 years earlier. The air in the community center gymnasium hung thick with the smell of industrial cleaner and floor wax. Maria Lopez, Tasha's foster mother since she was 8, moved with practiced efficiency, her mop gliding across the worn linoleum, humming a soft Spanish tune. It was late, the shouts and laughter of the after-school programs faded, leaving only the rhythmic swish-swish of the mop and another, more hesitant sound. From the corner room, designated vaguely as the music and art space, came the plinking notes of an old upright piano. Its paint was chipped, several keys yellowed like old teeth, and the C-sharp above middle C had a habit of sticking. 11-year-old Tasha sat perched on the wobbly bench, her small hands navigating a simple melody she'd heard somewhere, picking it out note by tentative note. She wasn't supposed to be there. Ms. Lopez usually had her doing homework at one of the folding tables while she finished her cleaning shift. But the piano always called to her. Even this battered old soldier held a magic the worn textbooks couldn't match. It felt like a secret language she was slowly deciphering. The door creaked open. Tasha flinched, expecting Ms. Lopez's gentle reprimand. Instead, an old man stood silhouetted in the doorway. He was tall but stooped, with a halo of white hair and deep-set eyes that seemed to hold the weight of years and countless smoky nightclubs. He wore a tweed jacket despite the LA warmth, and his dark, wrinkled hands rested on the handle of a simple wooden cane. This was Arthur "Doc" Thompson, a local legend whispered about in reverent tones. A jazz pianist who'd played with giants back in the day before settling into a quiet retirement punctuated by visits to the center for the senior lunch program. He rarely spoke, mostly observed. He didn't say anything now, just leaned against the doorframe, listening. Tasha's fingers faltered. The notes stumbled. She felt clumsy, exposed. After a long moment, Doc cleared his throat, a sound like gravel rolling downhill. "You got fire in those fingers, kid," he said, his voice a low, bluesy rumble. "But you're holding it back. Scared to let it burn." Tasha stared at him, speechless. He pushed himself off the doorframe and limped slowly towards the piano. He didn't ask permission, just eased himself onto the bench beside her. The old wood groaned under his weight. His hands, scarred and marked by time, hovered over the keys. Music ain't just notes on a page, he murmured, his gaze distant, looking at something only he could see. It's feelin'. It's the hurt, the joy, the whole damn mess of bein' alive. You got anger in you, I can hear it. He glanced at her, his eyes surprisingly sharp. Lost your folks, right? Bounced around. Tasha nodded stiffly and used to such directness. The familiar ache tightened her throat. Yeah, Doc sighed. That kind of hurt leaves a mark. Leaves a fire smolderin'. Don't let it eat you up. His fingers, surprisingly nimble despite their age, found a complex, melancholic jazz chord that seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Turn it into this. And so began the lessons. They weren't formal. Doc never charged a dime. He'd just appear when Tasha was practicing after Ms. Lopez finished cleaning, sometimes bringing photocopied sheets of Duke Ellington or Thelonious Monk, other times just sitting beside her, listening, offering gruff advice. That ain't just anger, kid, he'd say, tapping a rhythm on the dusty piano lid as she struggled with a particularly fast passage. That's power. Channel it. Make those arpeggios climb like they're reaching for something, just out of grasp. He taught her theory, yes, but mostly he taught her soul. He showed her how to bend notes, how to find the bluesy ache between the keys, how to make the piano sing not just with technical skill, but with raw, unfiltered emotion. He'd play riffs, complex and beautiful, then break them down, showing her the architecture beneath the improvisation. He told her stories of smoky clubs in Chicago and New York, of playing alongside Billie Holiday, of audiences moved to tears or driven to dance by the power of a well-placed chord. Music, he told her once, his voice softer than usual, it crosses lines. Rich, poor, black, white, a true note speaks to the soul, don't matter what kind of house that soul lives in. He saw the potential in her. The raw talent simmering beneath the surface of a quiet, watchful girl scarred by loss. He gave her not just technique, but purpose. The battered upright became her sanctuary. Doc her unlikely guide. Ms. Lopez, seeing the transformation, the focus and joy the music brought Tasha, rearranged her schedule to make sure Tasha had time at the piano, always leaving a thermos of hot chocolate for Doc on cold evenings. Then Doc started getting frail. His cough grew persistent, his steps slower. Some days he wouldn't show up. Tasha would practice alone, the silence in the room amplifying the absence of his gruff encouragement. One afternoon, Ms. Lopez found him slumped in his usual chair at the center, looking pale and exhausted. He waved away her concern, but his eyes held a weariness that went bone deep. He beckoned Tasha over. His breathing was shallow. He reached into his worn satchel and pulled out a sheaf of papers, manuscript paper covered in his own elegant, slightly shaky musical notation. It was an arrangement of a song Tasha didn't immediately recognize, full of intricate harmonies and soulful blues riffs woven into a familiar melody. Been working on this, he rasped, pressing the papers into her hand. His touch was cool, papery thin. For you. He met her gaze, his eyes searching hers. Listen, kid. Don't ever let anyone tell you what kind of music you should play. Play what's in here. He tapped his chest weakly. Play like your soul's on fire. Promise me. Tasha clutched the music, tears blurring her vision. I promise, document. He smiled, a faint, tired curving of his lips. Good. Now make him hear you. Those were the last words he ever spoke to her. Arthur Doc Thompson passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 days later. The funeral was small, held at the community center he'd frequented for years. People from the neighborhood came, seniors he'd shared lunches with, parents whose kids he'd occasionally offered snippets of wisdom to, Ms. Lopez standing stoically beside Tasha. Tasha didn't cry during the service. She felt numb, hollowed out. But when the time came for remembrances, she walked not to the podium but to the battered upright piano in the corner. The sticking C-sharp seemed irrelevant now. She sat down, spread Doc's last piece of music on the stand, and took a deep breath. The melody was lift every voice and sing. But it wasn't the stately anthem she knew. Doc had infused it with jazz chords, bluesy slides, moments of aching tenderness and soaring hope. As she played, the notes filled the room, weaving a tapestry of sorrow, gratitude, and fierce determination. She played for Doc, for Ms. Lopez, for herself. She played like her soul was on fire. When the last note faded, silence hung heavy, thick with emotion. Tasha finally let the tears fall, silent tracks on her cheeks. She looked at the sheet music, Doc's final gift, his final instruction. Make him hear you. She folded the music carefully, protectively. This wasn't just paper and ink. It was a legacy. It was a promise. And standing there, in the quiet grief of the South LA Community Center, Tasha Williams vowed she would honor it. She would make them hear. All of them, The shockwaves from Tasha's audition didn't dissipate, they rippled outward, morphing into something uglier in the echo chamber of Crestwood Academy's social hierarchy. Within a week, the whispers and stares coalesced online. Tasha was scrolling through her phone during lunch in the cavernous, sun-drenched cafeteria, a place where even the jello seemed to shimmer with privilege, when Javier slid onto the bench opposite her, his brow furrowed with concern. Javi Rodriguez was one of the few familiar faces from Tasha's middle school district who'd also landed a scholarship to Crestwood. A lanky kid with perpetually ink-stained fingers and eyes bright with coding constellations, he navigated the Crestwood currents with a quiet resilience Tasha admired. He was a whiz kid in robotics, his family having emigrated from Guatemala when he was 6. He understood feeling like an outsider. "You seen this?" Javi asked quietly, tilting his phone screen towards her. Tasha leaned in. It was a crudely photoshopped image circulating on Crestwood's unofficial student forum. Her face, caught mid-performance at the audition, was superimposed onto an old portrait of Mozart, but wearing overalls and holding a wrench instead of a conductor's baton. The caption read, "Welfare Mozart graces us with her presence. Don't touch the Steinway, it might get repoed." Below it, a string of laughing emojis and dismissive comments. Tasha's stomach clenched. It wasn't just the insult, it was the casual cruelty, the reduction of her talent, her entire existence, to a cheap stereotype. She could feel the eyes of nearby students flicking towards her, could almost hear the snickers that died when she looked up. Victoria Kensington sat several tables away, holding court with her clique, pointedly not looking in Tasha's direction, but radiating an unmistakable aura of smug satisfaction. "Victoria," Tasha murmured, the name tasting like ash. Javi nodded grimly. "Her digital fingerprints are all over it. Subtle but there. Trying to frame it like it's just student humor." Tasha pushed her uneaten lunch away. The bright cafeteria suddenly felt cold. "It's not humor. It's racist? Classist?" "Yeah," Javi finished for her. He tapped furiously on his own phone. "Don't worry. I'm on it." Before Tasha could ask, Javi showed her his screen again. He'd created a simple, powerful graphic. A stylized image of piano keys morphing into an equals sign. Above it, the text, "Talent has no zip code." Below it, the hashtag keys not labels. "Posting it now," Javi said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Sharing it everywhere I can. Counter-narrative. Fight pixels with pixels." A small measure of warmth returned to Tasha. An ally. Someone who saw the ugliness and wasn't afraid to push back. Later that day, another small act of defiance occurred. Tasha was retrieving her worn music theory textbook from her locker when Priya Shah approached her. Priya was a junior, a quiet, intense girl who played violin with breathtaking skill. She was usually immersed in her own world of sheet music and rosin dust, rarely engaging in the school's social dramas. Priya stopped in front of Tasha, her dark eyes serious behind her glasses. "That meme? It's disgusting," she said, her voice low but firm. "I told Victoria that to her face." Tasha blinked, surprised. "You did?" Priya nodded, adjusting the strap of her violin case. "I told her she's just jealous because you have actual talent, something her father's money can't buy. She didn't appreciate it." A ghost of a smile touched Priya's lips. "Don't let them get to you. What you did at that audition, it was important." She gave a slight, respectful nod and walked away, leaving Tasha feeling a little less alone. But the institutional weight of Crestwood soon made itself felt. Tasha was summoned to the principal's office the next afternoon. Principal Delaney's office was all dark wood, leather chairs, and framed photos of himself shaking hands with important-looking people. He was a Crestwood alum, impeccably dressed, with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He gestured for Tasha to sit, then leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Tasha," he began, his tone smooth, reasonable. "We're thrilled to have a student with your raw energy join our music program. Diversity of talent is something we value here at Crestwood." Tasha waited, sensing the inevitable, but, however, Principal Delaney continued, his smile tightening slightly. "There have been some, let's call them social adjustments, since your audition. Some online chatter. Unfortunate, really." He sighed, as if burdened by the trivialities of teenage squabbles. Crestwood prides itself on a certain level of decorum, a certain harmony. He leaned forward slightly. "Your performance, while technically impressive, was perhaps a bit aggressive for the setting. And this online back and forth initiated by your friend, Mr. Rodriguez? It's stirring unnecessary conflict." Tasha stiffened. "The meme Victoria Kensington posted." "Allegedly posted," Tasha Delaney corrected smoothly. "We have no definitive proof. And frankly, we need to maintain a positive environment for all our students, especially those whose families are significant benefactors like the Kensingtons. The implication was clear. He steepled his fingers again. My advice? Focus on your studies. Perhaps explore musical styles more suited to your background? Jazz, gospel, perhaps? There are wonderful traditions there. Trying to force yourself into the classical mold, especially in such a confrontational way, might not be the best path for you here. Stick to your kind of music. Blend in. Find your place quietly. Your kind of music. The phrase echoed Victoria's dismissive tone, Doc's warning. It was gatekeeping disguised as helpful advice. He wasn't telling her to find harmony, he was telling her to know her place. To stay within the lines drawn by wealth and expectation. Tasha left the office feeling cold. The principal's words a chilling confirmation of the invisible walls within Crestwood's gleaming facade. Blend in, stay quiet. After Doc's final words? After the fire she'd felt playing that Steinway? No, that night, curled up on the worn sofa in Ms. Lopez's small but meticulously clean living room, the sounds of South LA filtering through the open window, distant sirens, laughter from the street, the rhythm of a neighborhood alive and breathing. Tasha pulled out her phone. The hashtag keys not labels hashtag had gained some traction, shared by students outside the Crestwood bubble, but the welfare Mozart meme still festered within the school's network. Blending in wasn't the answer. Fighting pixels with pixels wasn't enough. They needed something bigger. Something louder. Something undeniable. She opened a message to Javi. Her fingers flew across the screen, fueled by a fresh wave of determination, the principal's condescending advice ringing in her ears. He told me to stick to my kind of music, she typed. Okay. Fine. But we're gonna do it our way. I need a plan. She hit send, the blue message bubble popping up on the screen. A plan. A way to answer not just Victoria, not just the principal, but the whole system that tried to tell her where she belonged and what music was hers to play. A way to honor Doc's legacy. A way to make them all hear. The plan began to take shape not in the sterile halls of Crestwood, but in the heart of Tasha's own territory, South Los Angeles. Specifically in the dusty, memory-filled space that had once been Doc Thompson's small studio apartment, now kept intact by a sympathetic landlord who'd known Doc for years and offered it to Ms. Lopez for a nominal rent as a practice space after Tasha won a small local music prize. It wasn't much, a cramped room above a laundromat, smelling faintly of old paper, lemon oil polish, and the ghost of Doc's pipe tobacco. His old upright piano, slightly more distinguished than the community centers but still bearing the marks of time, stood against one wall. Stacks of sheet music and vinyl records lined the shelves. A framed photo of a younger Doc, grinning beside Dizzy Gillespie, hung crookedly near the window overlooking the bustling street below. This place felt real, grounded, infused with the spirit Tasha needed. Okay, here's the idea, Tasha announced one sweltering Saturday afternoon. Gathered in the small studio were Javi, clutching a portable synth keyboard salvaged from electronic scraps, and two new recruits Tasha had sought out from the neighborhood. Minjae Kim, a high school sophomore with perpetually dyed blue hair and lightning-fast wrists, sat behind a compact electronic drum kit she'd pieced together herself. Her parents ran the corner market down the street, and her drumming, a fusion of K-pop precision and intricate hip-hop beats, often rattled the windows of their apartment above the store. She possessed a quiet intensity that exploded when she played. Claudette Dubois, a senior whose family hailed from Haiti, leaned against the wall, her long limbs radiating a dancer's coiled energy. She moved with a fluid grace, trained in traditional Haitian folk dance but equally adept at interpreting the sharp angles and storytelling power of modern hip-hop choreography. She had a smile that could light up the room and a fierce pride in her heritage. They want me to stick to my kind of music? Tasha said, pacing the small space. Fine. We'll give them our kind of music. All of it. Blended. Javi's eyes lit up behind his glasses. Like a mashup? Live? Exactly, Tasha confirmed. Classical meet hip-hop. Jazz riffs meet folk rhythms. Your synth magic, Javi. Minjae's beats. Claudette's movement. My piano. We take all the pieces of who we are, where we come from, and weave them together. Minjae tapped a complex rhythm on her knee. Sounds dope. Challenging, but dope. Claudette pushed off the wall, a thoughtful expression on her face. A visual and auditory conversation, she murmured, showing how different traditions can speak to each other. I like it. Their laboratory became Doc's old studio. Rehearsals were chaotic at first. Tasha's classical precision sometimes clashed with Minjae's syncopated beats. Javi experimented with synth textures, trying to bridge the gap between a Chopin nocturne and a driving bass line. Claudette worked tirelessly, translating the musical fusion into movement, sometimes flowing lyrical and graceful, sometimes sharp and percussive. They argued. They laughed. They pushed each other. Tasha, initially focused solely on the piano, learned to listen differently, to find space for Minjae's intricate fills, to respond to the electronic textures Javi created. Minjae learned to soften her attack for the more delicate passages. Javi discovered how synthesized sounds could enhance, not just compete with, acoustic instruments. Claudette became the visual embodiment of their sonic experiment, her dance telling the story of cultures colliding and connecting. They started weaving in elements from Doc's repertoire, bluesy chord progressions, unexpected improvisational breaks. Tasha brought out the arrangement of lift every voice and sing, and they began reimagining it, layering Minjae's subtle, heartbeat-like rhythm beneath the melody, adding Javi's ethereal synth pads, envisioning Claudette interpreting its weight and hope through movement. Their secret weapon was Ms. Lopez. While the kids focused on creation, she focused on infiltration. Armed with a folder containing Tasha's Crestwood acceptance letter, clippings about her local music prize, and an unwavering determination fueled by fierce maternal pride, she navigated the labyrinthine bureaucracy of Beverly Hills cultural organizations. She returned one evening, triumph gleaming in her eyes. "I did it," she announced, waving a form. "I got you a slot. The Beverly Hills Youth Arts Gala." Javi whistled. "Seriously? That's like the pinnacle of pretentious high school art events. Victoria Kensington won their top music prize last year." Tasha grinned, a slow, determined smile spreading across her face. "Exactly. It's her turf. We're not just performing. We're crashing their party." The path wasn't smooth. As their rehearsals grew louder, more confident, the inevitable happened. A noise complaint was filed, citing disruptive, non-traditional music emanating from the studio above the laundromat. The landlord, though sympathetic, had to enforce the building rules. They were forced to practice during limited hours, sometimes resorting to using headphones for the electronic elements, muffling the drums, Tasha playing the upright softly. Frustration mounted. Maybe Principal Delaney was right, Tasha muttered one evening after a particularly stifled rehearsal, the weight of expectation and opposition pressing down on her. "Maybe we should just—" "No," Claudette interrupted firmly. "Don't you dare let them silence you before we even get on stage." Minjae nodded, her drumsticks resting on her knees. "This music? It deserves to be heard. Loud." Javi adjusted his glasses. "Think about the hashtag, Tasha. Hashtag keys, not labels. This is what it means. Showing them labels don't fit." Tasha looked around the small, cramped studio at her friends, her collaborators, their faces resolute in the dim light. She saw Doc's photo on the wall, his encouraging grin seeming to pierce through her moment of doubt. She remembered his last words, "Make em hear you." He didn't mean just the notes. He meant the message, the truth of who they were, where they came from, the vibrant, complex symphony of their blended identities. "You're right," Tasha said, her voice regaining its strength. "You're absolutely right. They want us to stick to our kind of music? We'll show them what our kind of music sounds like. We just need to be smarter about rehearsals." They started practicing in rotating locations, Javi's garage, Minjae's soundproofed practice space above the market, even the community center late at night, thanks to Ms. Lopez pulling some strings. The music grew tighter, more intricate, more powerful. It was a statement being honed, a crescendo building, ready to break not just in Beverly Hills, but anywhere ears were willing or unwilling to listen. They weren't just a band, they were an ensemble, a living, breathing testament to the harmony found not in uniformity, but in the bold, courageous blending of different voices. The Beverly Hills Youth Arts Gala glittered with an almost aggressive sparkle. Chandeliers dripped crystals, champagne flutes clinked, sparkling cider for the under-21s, but the glassware was the same, and the air hummed with polite conversation and the rustle of expensive fabrics. It was a world away from Doc's dusty studio, a polished stage for the city's privileged young artists. Backstage, the atmosphere was thick with nervous energy. Tasha's crew, dubbed the South LA Collective on the program, a name Javi had coined, stood out. While other performers wore formal attire, crisp suits, and flowing dresses, Tasha's ensemble sported their own carefully curated look. Tasha wore dark jeans, Doc's old tweed jacket over a simple black top, her thrift store find reimagined. Minjae rocked ripped black jeans, combat boots, and a vintage band t-shirt under a sharp blazer. Claudette wore flowing pants and a brightly colored top that spoke of her Haitian roots, her hair intricately braided. Javi, ever practical, wore dark pants and a black t-shirt emblazoned with his #KeysNotLabels logo, his synth slung over his shoulder, a laptop perched precariously on a rolling case. Their outfits weren't designer labels, they were statements of identity, DIY armor for the cultural battlefield they were about to enter. They watched from the wings as Victoria Kensington took the stage. She looked impeccable in a pale silk gown, her blonde hair swept up elegantly. She sat at the gleaming Steinway, a different one, but just as imposing as Crestwood's, and launched into a Bach concerto. Her playing was technically flawless, each note precise, perfectly executed. Yet it felt sterile. Polished to the point of being frictionless, lacking the fire, the soul Tasha knew music could hold. The audience applauded politely, appreciatively, a ripple of well-mannered sound. As Victoria took her bows, a smug glance flickered towards the wings where Tasha stood. It was a look that said, "This is how it's done. This is real art." Then it was their turn. The announcer stumbled slightly over their name. The South. LA Collective. Before they walked onto the brightly lit stage, a murmur went through the crowd. They didn't look like the usual Gala performers. They didn't fit the mold. Tasha took her place at the Steinway. Minjae settled behind her compact electronic kit. Javi set up his synth and laptop. Claudette stood poised center stage, bathed in light. There was a moment of profound silence, the audience watching with curiosity, perhaps skepticism. Tasha took a breath, meeting Javi's eye, then Minjae's, then Claudette's. A silent confirmation passed between them. "Ready," she began, not with an explosion, but with a whisper. The delicate, instantly recognizable opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the auditorium. The melody, pure and evocative, hung in the air. The audience visibly relaxed, settling back into familiar territory. Their expression seemed to say, classical music. Tasha played the first verse with exquisite tenderness, honoring the beauty of the original composition. But then, just as the familiar melody began to lull, something shifted. A subtle, pulsing beat emerged from Minjae's drums, almost subliminal at first, then growing steadily, locking into a syncopated groove beneath the Debussy. Javi's synth added a layer of ambient texture, a low, resonant hum that grounded the ethereal piano line. Heads began to turn. Eyebrows rose. This wasn't in the program. As the Debussy theme returned, Tasha's playing gained intensity, weaving in bluesy grace notes, hints of jazz harmony, Doc's influence bleeding through. The beat solidified, becoming a clear, undeniable hip-hop rhythm. And then Claudette began to move. Her dance wasn't ballet or traditional modern. It was a fusion, the fluidity of her Haitian roots blended with the sharp, expressive isolations of hip-hop and the storytelling gestures of contemporary dance. She interpreted the music, the tension between classical and modern, the dialogue between piano and beat, her body a living bridge between worlds. The music swelled, transitioning seamlessly. The Clair de Lune melody fractured, reformed, intertwining with an original theme Tasha had composed, urgent, rhythmic, full of complex chords. Javi unleashed a driving synth bass line. Minjae's drumming became more complex, more powerful, her sticks a blur. Tasha wasn't just playing the piano, she was dueling with it, coaxing out sounds that were both beautiful and raw, classical technique fused with street energy. The initial murmurs in the audience turned into a captivated silence, then something else. Feet began to tap. Heads started nodding. The polite reserve of the Beverly Hills crowd began to crack. They were witnessing something unexpected, something vibrant and alive, something that defied easy categorization. Javi, multitasking, had his phone propped up, live-streaming the performance. He glanced at the viewer count, 10K, 50K, 100K, climbing rapidly as the #KeysNotLabels hashtag, shared aggressively by their friends back home and Javi's online network, started trending. Comments flooded the stream. Who are these guys? This is fire. Music has no boundaries. Then came the emotional core of their performance. The driving beat softened, Minjae switching to brushes, creating a hushed, expectant rhythm. Javi's synth provided a shimmering, gospel-inflected pad. Tasha paused, took another deep breath, and began to play Doc's arrangement of Lift Every Voice and Sing. The melody, already profound, gained new weight in this context. Played on the Steinway, backed by the subtle, modern groove, it became an anthem not just of Black history, but of resilience, of claiming space, of weaving diverse threads into a single, powerful tapestry. Claudette's movements became slower, more deliberate, imbued with a sense of history, struggle, and ultimately, soaring hope. Tasha played with everything she had, channeling Doc's spirit, her own journey, the collective energy of her ensemble. She poured her anger, her pride, her grief, her hope into the keys. In the audience, Victoria Kensington's mother, impeccably dressed and coiffed, let out an audible gasp, her hand flying to her chest. Others leaned forward, mesmerized. The polite applause from earlier seemed a distant memory. As the final notes of the anthem swelled, Tasha incorporated a final, defiant flourish, a cascading run reminiscent of the revolutionary etude she'd played at her audition, but this time it wasn't just anger. It was triumph. The music ended. Silence stretched for a heartbeat, thick and charged. Then the eruption. It wasn't polite clapping. It was thunderous applause, cheers, people getting to their feet, stamping. The sound washed over the stage, a wave of genuine, unbridled enthusiasm that transcended the usual gala decorum. Backstage, Javi grinned, holding up his phone. 500K viewers and climbing. We broke their fancy gala. Tasha, Minjae, and Claudette joined hands, bowing amidst the roar. Tasha's eyes scanned the crowd, finding Ms. Lopez near the back, tears streaming down her face, beaming with pride. She saw Priya Shah clapping wildly. She even saw Principal Delaney looking utterly bewildered, applauding slowly as if unsure how to react. They hadn't just performed. They had delivered a message, loud and clear, amplified far beyond the walls of the opulent auditorium. They had taken the music they were told to stick to, blended it with the music they lived, and created something new, something powerful, something undeniably theirs. They had made them here. 1 year later, the California sun, unfiltered and generous, streamed through the large windows of the newly inaugurated Arthur Doc Thompson Community Music Wing at the South Los Angeles Community Center. The transformation was stunning. What was once a single, cramped room with a battered upright was now a vibrant, multi-room facility with practice spaces, a small recording booth, and a main room featuring not a Steinway, perhaps, but several well-maintained pianos, drum kits, guitars, and sound equipment. The funding hadn't come from wealthy benefactors or city grants, but from a flood of small donations that poured in after the South LA Collective's gala performance went viral. The hashtag Keys Not Labels movement had sparked something, amplified by the raw power of their music and the undeniable story behind it. People from all over the country, moved by their performance and their message, had chipped in $5, $10, $20 at a time, building the space note by note, dollar by dollar. Today was the official opening, and fittingly, the South LA Collective was the main act. Tasha, now 15, sat at the center piano, flanked by Minjae, Claudette, and Javi. They looked more polished, more confident than they had a year ago. The synergy between them honed by countless rehearsals and local performances. They played a short, vibrant set, a blend of their signature fusion pieces, infused with the joy and energy of their community gathered around them. The applause was warm, familial, echoing with shared pride. As they finished, Ms. Lopez beamed from the side, wiping away a proud tear. Community leaders spoke, thanking the ensemble for inspiring the project. It felt less like an encore and more like a beginning. During the reception afterwards, amidst the cheerful chaos of neighborhood kids exploring the new instruments and parents sharing celebratory snacks, Tasha felt a hesitant presence beside her. She turned. It was Victoria Kensington. She looked different. Gone was the entitled smirk, the aura of effortless superiority. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She seemed subdued, uncertain. She had apparently transferred from Crestwood to a public arts magnet school mid-year, news Tasha had heard through the grapevine but hadn't dwelled on. "Hi," Victoria mumbled, avoiding Tasha's direct gaze, studying the soundproofing panels on the wall instead. "Hi, Victoria," Tasha replied evenly, waiting. There was an awkward silence. Victoria shifted her weight. I saw the stream. Last year. And, well," she took a shallow breath. I didn't know people like you could play like that." The words hung in the air. People like you. It was still clumsy, still tinged with the prejudice she'd been raised in, but the anger, the dismissiveness was gone. It was replaced by a raw, bewildered honesty. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was an acknowledgement. A crack in the wall of her assumptions. Tasha could have reacted with anger, could have pointed out the lingering bias in the phrase. But looking at Victoria, seeing the genuine, if awkward, attempt at connection, she chose a different path. She remembered Doc's words about music crossing lines. She thought about the purpose of this new wing, to build bridges, not walls. Tasha reached into the tote bag slung over her shoulder, the bag that held her sheet music and snacks. She pulled out a brightly colored flyer. It advertised the free music workshops and lessons now being offered at the new wing, open to anyone, regardless of background or experience level. She held it out to Victoria. "We have free lessons here now," Tasha said simply, her voice calm and steady. "Piano, drums, synth dance. Every Saturday. You should come sometime. If you want." Victoria stared at the flyer as if it were a foreign object. Then, slowly, hesitantly, she took it. Her fingers brushed Tasha's for a fleeting second. "Oh, thanks." She glanced up, finally meeting Tasha's eyes for a brief moment. There was confusion there, maybe a flicker of shame, but also something else. Curiosity? Victoria quickly looked away again, mumbled another thanks, and slipped back into the crowd, clutching the flyer. Tasha watched her go, a complex mix of emotions swirling within her. Change was slow. Understanding didn't happen overnight. But maybe, just maybe, a seed had been planted. The crowd began to thin. Javi, Minjae, and Claudette came over, buzzing with excitement about future projects, already planning their next rehearsal. As Tasha laughed with her friends, her gaze drifted to the wall near the entrance of the new wing. There, prominently displayed, was a framed photograph. It was the one from Doc's old studio, a younger Arthur Doc Thompson, grinning beside Dizzy Gillespie, radiating pure joy and musical passion. His eyes seemed to sparkle, looking out over the space built in his name, filled with the music of a new generation. Tasha smiled, a deep, quiet sense of fulfillment settling within her. She thought of the journey, the humiliation at Crestwood, the hours with Doc, the fight against prejudice, the triumph at the Gala, the creation of this vibrant space. It was more than she could have imagined back when she first touched that gleaming Steinway. She felt a sense of connection to Doc, a continuation of his legacy. "Make him hear you," he'd said. They had, and they would keep going. She turned back to her friends, her ensemble, her family. The energy in the room was palpable, a symphony of hope and potential. Tasha whispered, almost to herself, but loud enough for Doc's picture, for the spirit of the place to hear, "We're just getting started." Outside, the sounds of South Los Angeles, the traffic, the music from passing cars, the laughter blended with the notes spilling from the open windows of the community music wing. It wasn't a single, perfect melody, but a complex, vibrant, sometimes clashing, always evolving harmony. True harmony isn't one note, but the courage to blend them. Thank you for watching Tasha's incredible journey. We hope her story of courage and music resonated with you. If you were moved or inspired, please show your support. Like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more powerful stories like hers.